In today's economy, every ad dollar counts. That's why performance marketers are turning to Rokt Ads to reach over 400 million active shoppers in the transaction moment when they're completing a purchase online. You only pay when customers engage. Learn more at rokt.com/emarketer. That's rokt.com/emarketer. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Banking and Payment Show, a Behind the Numbers podcast from eMarketer. Today is May 13th, 2025. I'm Rob Rubin, Head of Business Development at eMarketer, and your host today. Today, we're going to talk about growing consumer debt and how it will play into all the economic uncertainty in front of us. Joining me today are eMarketer analysts Grace Broadbent and Oscar Orozco. Hey, guys, how you doing?
Hey, Rob.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for having me on, Rob. You know, it's been a few years.
It hasn't been a few years. I've only been doing this a few years, but it's been a while.
It feels like it's been a while. We're happy to be back.
And I think it's my first time being on with you,
true.
Oscar, so this is
be
exciting.
I want to have an icebreaker quiz for you guys to sort of get us warmed up on the topic today. So I'm going to throw a number at you first. According to the New York Federal Reserve, in Q4 24, consumer debt was $18.04 trillion, with mortgage debt representing about 70%, $12.6 trillion. What do you guys think, that $18.04 trillion in Q4 24? What do you think consumer debt was in Q1 2020, pre-pandemic? So how much has debt grown since right before the pandemic? Anyone want to take a guess? I know the number, so I can't guess.
Go ahead, Grace. You start.
I'm guessing 17.1.
So you think debt went down, like we had more debt since before the pandemic? Or just a little bit more? It's at 18.1 now, so you're saying we've taken on an extra trillion.
So it went up. Oh, that might be too much. I might take it back. 17.5.
I was going to be a lot lower. I was going to say 13, so it's drastically gone
Well,
up.
so this is good in so many different ways, but the answer is just over 14 trillion.
Oh, all right.
So the reason that,
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's bad, right? It's not good, but it's that, Oscar, you're a forecaster. So
I just,
it's like an interview question for forecasters.
Exactly. I'm always within margin of error.
So here's the next question.
You're good at your job.
What's the next biggest consumer debt category? So the categories are student loans, auto loans, and credit card debt. So we know mortgage debt was 70% of that number, 12.6 trillion. Which category is next?
I'm going to go with credit card.
This is relevant later.
I think I actually have these.
All right.
Notes.
So auto loans
it's
is
auto
number.
loans.
You should have. It would have been so
Well,
good. It's so smart.
That was a guess. I didn't know 2020.
Grace doesn't need to prove
I
it.
can't lie.
Auto loans is 1.66 trillion. Student loans is 1.62 trillion, and credit cards is just only $1.21 trillion.
Wow. Okay. So pretty close.
So pretty close. So that was a long icebreaker, but it was kind of a fun one, I thought, and it was related to the topic. So I want to get right to our first segment, the headlines. In the headlines, I choose a story related to this topic. For today, I chose a Wall Street Journal article from April 29th on how retail giants have managed to keep a lid on prices since the tariffs began. In short, from the article, retailers like Walmart, Target, and Amazon have kept everyday prices flat despite the new import tariffs. And they've been doing it by leaning first hard on the suppliers to not raise prices, accelerating shipments before the tariff dates, and stockpiling inventories and tapping that stockpiled inventory. But as the article points out, the executives are now warning that those tricks are almost all spent. Higher shelf prices and even spot shortages could hit within weeks, posing a fresh inflation risk for consumers who are already carrying, as we've been not really laughing, but kind of laughing about our record household debt that we have. So, Oscar, which consumer categories are we going to see increases on first?
Yeah, this is something we've talked about a lot on forecasting, of course, and the way I thought of it was, sort of two major factors, right? So one is, of course, just thinking about what category is largely imported, right? Especially from China, from Southeast Asia. But the other one is, of course, thinking of the categories in terms of what is a discretionary spend versus an essential. So really price elasticity. And, the top one for me is apparel and footwear. I believe the data states that almost 100, nearly 100% of all of these products are imported. So they're facing these higher tariffs, and it's a major shock for retailers. And they're essentially having to pass on right away these price increases to consumers. So
especially in categories like back to school, which is going to be coming up soon, and that's where
absolutely
parents are buying cheap fashion.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, some of the back to school and holiday items are already sort of stocked up and kept separately. But nonetheless, this is, I think, the category that is going to feel or is already feeling the impact immediately. So that was top one for me.
What about, a lot of grocery and household goods are probably also affected when they're going to run out of trips. So, Grace, what are the likely scenarios? Like, is spending going to stay the same and we're just going to see more debt? Are people just going to is there more room for us to consume, to take on more debt? Or are consumers going to cut back on non-essentials and we're going to be in a full-fledged recession?
I think it's going to be probably a little bit of both. I do think consumers are going to take on more debt, but also, I do think there will be a pullback in spending. We have already seen a little bit of it in payment providers' Q1 earnings that just came out last week. For instance, Synchrony in their earnings said they're already seeing a pullback in discretionary spending in areas like furniture and travel.
Did they report delinquencies on store cards?
I don't know off the top of my head, but they have the delinquencies they've already been at elevated levels, and they have showing no signs of going down. They were starting to go down a little bit in the last couple of quarters of 24, but now they are, ticking right back, so are staying even. But yeah, payment providers are already starting to see the effects. Also, consumers it's still early on, but in all the surveys I've seen, every consumer basically said, I do plan on pulling back spending or switching to lower priced items, maybe private label items. And when we're talking about clothes and back to school, I think there's going to be a shift to more secondhand items.
We've seen a lot of news about dolls, right? Like
yes.
People you can't, like $30 is too much. People should just get away with $3 is enough now. So is that going to be a category like toys? Is that going to get hit hard?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yes, even President Trump has been mentioning dolls and toys, and it's up there with apparel for being very, very impacted by tariffs. So I think, it's another category. Also, in terms of price elasticity, in terms of whether it's less of an essential, right? So these are things that parents will undoubtedly pass up, push to next year. So there'll be a big impact on any sort of retailer that sells toys and the manufacturers, of course.
Right. And telling kids that they can only have $3 is extreme. I mean,
and consumer electronics, guys, too, which are, it goes hand in hand with toys, the new smartphones and the new TVs, the new gadgets.
But haven't we seen carve-outs? Are we starting to see tariff carve-outs for certain categories of products? Like, didn't I read that laptops aren't part of it anymore?
Yeah. There seems to be certain items which, laptops are actually a little bit more of a necessity product, right? So perhaps that's the reasoning behind that. But we are starting to see a bit more of that. But I think at this stage, we've been hearing about this the first 100 days. It seems to be pretty clear what the categories are going to be impacted. Consumer electronics largely are at the forefront of this.
Right.
Yeah, not going to dodge them in any way.
I want to jump to our final segment for argument's sake. In in our final segment, I want us to argue nicely about this.
We'll try.
It's Grace.
No promises.
I want to argue about what consumer debt's going to look like in 2026, given everything that we've been talking about. And what I want us to first do is I have 3 scenarios. And if we could rank those scenarios. So the first scenario is that we're going to muddle through, right? Through 2026, whatever, the Fed's going to maybe lower rates a bit. Trump's tariffs aren't as bad as everybody says in terms of its impact. Perhaps wages are going to keep up with price increases a bit to sort of dull the effect. So that's number one. Number 2 is a hard landing, which is that the debt is just going to reach a boiling point. And consumers are going to pull back on spending, and we're going to have a full-on recession where banks are going to start to charge off loans and charge off credit debt and become much tighter in giving out new credit. And that is the hard landing. And then the third is what I like to call a selective jubilee. So I'm going to explain what a jubilee
Sounds so
is.
fun.
But a jubilee, I have to say it up an octave every time. The government steps in and forgives loans for millions of consumers that start anew. So do we want to give our rankings, or do I want to just tell everybody a little bit about the history of jubilees?
Start there.
I'm going to start there because it's fun and it's informative. A jubilee is a large-scale government-led cancellation or restructuring of private debt to reset the economic game board. Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness is an example, a really good example of a jubilee. His executive order was trying to forgive about $400 billion of student loan debt, the original executive order. That was about 25% of all student loan debt. So he wasn't trying to say everybody, we're starting from zero. He was basically taking sort of categories of folks and doing that. But the times go back to, I found in my research, even in ancient Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
Right? Right? There, the royals used to wipe out farm loans to prevent any sort of market collapse, and also probably to maintain the money that they're already getting from taxes. So it's like, you haven't been paying your taxes, but if I take that from you, you're not going to be able to pay me more taxes. So let's just pay me what you can. I think that's the
start of civilization.
Maybe how the conversation went. Or the king got killed by his brother, and the brother gave everybody a break. Who knows? But that's what a jubilee is, and you can see why I was trying not to get into it. So, Grace, what is your order? Muddle through, hard landing, selective, jubilee.
My order is exactly the way you just said
All right.
it.
You think we're going to muddle through?
Most likely is muddle through. Yeah.
And if we don't muddle through, it's not going to be good. All right.
Correct.
Oscar?
Yeah, I'm a bit more pessimistic, it seems. I'm at the hard landing here. I mean, I think all the data, much of which we've already discussed, is suggesting that we're heading toward a full-on recession here, and it's not going to be pretty. And I think we're going to see the charge-offs, and just increasing consumer debt, just to keep up with these increasing prices. So, pessimistic.
What's the second?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. And then it would probably be muddle through and then the jubilee. I just don't see it, Rob. I don't see it.
I don't see it either.
I'm going with the selective jubilee. Wow. And I think that the government in power today is going to use government money to fix it when it breaks, because that's a tool that they have. An example, the farmers bailout from the tariffs during the first Trump administration, where they were paying farmers money. Maybe it wasn't paying directly off a debt, but it's an example of getting close to it.
I think, though, if we go back to the student loan example, the Trump administration is so anti that.
I was thinking that example.
So anti-student loan relief.
Maybe small businesses, although he literally not long ago was although they've been complaining, small businesses saying this impact is being felt already, he's sort of discounting that fact. So I don't know.
Hear me out. I think it's going to be in the mortgage area. And it's because it represents the largest chunk of consumer debt. I think they're going to let the banks write off. They'll protect banks if banks get in trouble with real estate. And I think that that's where the trouble is going to become perhaps apparent. One of the scenarios is that the real estate after the pandemic, real estate prices around the country really exploded. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people moved. There was a lot of movement going on and a lot of people buying and selling houses at that time. So anybody that might have in 2021 or 2022 taken out an 5-year adjustable rate mortgage on a super low rate is in a panic right now because their new rate's going to be so much higher. And their payments are going to potentially be more than they can afford. So I think that we're going to see a housing crisis come with mortgages coming due, and that what they're going to do, because they've already proven in the pandemic and everything else that they're perfectly willing, they, meaning the government, will bail out the banks. Mm-hmm. So I think that the jubilee is going to be that people's mortgages are going to get forgiven.
I think while I don't agree there's going to be a selective jubilee, I ranked it last, but I think kind of your reasoning and my reasoning is similar for what we chose, that there will be some sort of a bailout, but I'm thinking the bailout more in terms of Trump might just 180 the tariffs. He's going to see things are going terribly. He's going to pull everything back, not actually let it get to this point. He doesn't want to upset, his voters that way. And so I think there is going to be
the tariffs are two-way, right? Like what's happening now is that our trading partners are developing new trading relationships, that supply chains are being adjusted. So him saying, this was a mistake, he would never say that, but he could turn on a dime,
I mean, I definitely think there will be absolutely repercussions from the trade war that has already existed, but I just think there could be a pullback to avoid the hard landing.
Yeah, and I think a key metric for me is business sentiment, which of course implies if we start seeing any increases in unemployment, that's a place where I agree with you, Grace. He's going to have to react to that, and I think that would come before any sort of bailouts would need to happen, right? So let's see if the businesses start feeling it to the point where we're seeing increased unemployment rates. So that's what I would keep an eye on.
All right. So my order, because I haven't said it, so I'm going with selective jubilee. I think that, and then it's to hard landing actually. Mm-hmm. That I think if they can't, that I'm worried that the Fed can't use interest rates to fix it. That the only thing that's going to happen is that there's going to be a hard landing. Mm-hmm. That even the selective bailout's not going to be selective enough or big enough. And that would increase the debt.
Yeah.
I made a big explosion face because we're audio only and no one can see me.
Unfortunately, it feels like that's the path we're on, Rob. Absolutely.
So,
well, I very much hope I'm right, not only for my pride, but, for the sake of all of our financial well-being in the future.
Well, I would like to say that this has been fun in a way. I mean, we've been talking about a jubilee
and doomsday scenarios.
That does make it a lot more
voice
fun.
An octave without seeming silly. But I really first thank you, Grace and Oscar, for laughing along with me. I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun today.
Absolutely.
No, it's great chatting with you all. I'm only a little bit scared.
Yeah, we're gonna all just.
We'll have
focus
some laughs
on your day to day, and we're all
meantime.
going to have fun.
And thanks for having me on, and it's a great chat.
Yeah, and I want to thank everyone for listening to the Banking and Payment Show. Also, thank you to our editor, Victoria. Our next episode is on June 10th, so be sure to check it out. See you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.